All right, welcome back everybody to another phenomenal episode of AI plus Data Mastery. Quick thanks to our sponsors, Data Accelerator and Evolve with AI. I'm your host, Jason Renno, and as always, I'm excited about this show, but today I'm excited because here's like the true definition of that unsexy business that is still just so necessary and doing so many good things that you just happen on a daily basis that you would never even know exists. So today I'm joined by Anthony Gioeli from Superior Sensor Technology. This company is building intelligent pressure sensors that do what legacy sensors just frankly still can't and haven't been able to for what, 20 or 30 years? So
Yep.
think microcontrollers inside the sensor built for mission critical markets like medical devices, HVAC, and aviation, where those real-time metrics and data and information can mean the difference, right? Sometimes life or death, or a crash or not a crash, or, again, life or death in most cases, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to the show, Anthony. I really appreciate you being here. Let's just jump right in here. Typically, the first question I like to ask, which really gets right to the heart of the company, is what's the problem you're solving? What's the problem that Superior Sensor Technology identified and is actively, on a quest to solve within the industries or within these different manufactured industries?
Well, first, Jason, thank you for having me. And if you think about the pressure sensor market, there really has been very little innovation in the last 20 to 30 years. Pressure sensors are there, and an engineer would have to go and then grab an off-the-shelf standard sensor and then design a system around it. Which is interesting because if you look at the technology industry, the tech industry has evolved so much. If you look at semiconductors, right? There used to, years ago there were single purpose, microcontrollers. Then, the whole SoC or system on a chip concept evolved where people were adding more and more functionality. And it wasn't just adding two or three pieces together, it was integrating them. So in a case you get, 1 + 1 = 3. And if you look at sensors, especially today, where you're trying to get information from the physical world and bringing it into your computing system, those sensors really they really hadn't changed much. And we saw the opportunity of taking these SoC concepts and thinking, well, why don't we come up with intelligent sensors that, depending on your application, have different attributes so that a design engineer can more easily design and integrate our sensors into their system, but also be able to get better performance and extract more relevant data out of the sensor readings.
Interesting. You don't realize how much data is out there or how much data is being collected or how valuable data is on these little,
Exactly.
I want to call them almost microscopic moments. It's we actually just had somebody on here that is a engineer helping solve something with CPAP devices, but he was talking about how they had to develop an edge AI type of device where they could take they couldn't make the device affordable and send all the data back to the cloud for AI
Right.
computing and back and forth. So they had to figure out how to do it right on the nightstand.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it made me start thinking, well, and before they even had the data, they probably needed like 3 or 4 of your sensors within that CPAP device, or maybe one. I don't know how many there is before they even get all that device. And, I don't know, maybe you guys are working together and we just don't even know
Yeah.
it.
Well, CPAP is interesting because one of our newer product lines was designed specifically for CPAP devices. And it
Gotcha.
has a lot of unique innovation. One of them is we actually took two physical sensors and integrated them into one sensor package. Because most CPAP devices have a differential pressure sensor and a gauge pressure sensor. One measures, the pressure coming from the machine. The other one is the breathing of the patient. And we combined them into one. And then we offered the ability to have the closed loop control done within the sensor. So you don't have to put the external components so that, it's a much faster response time if the patient's breathing patterns change. We also added snore detection capability. So we added a lot of this intelligence, which makes it a lot easier for a CPAP manufacturer to design such a system. But Jason, going back to your point, you're absolutely right. Most people don't realize that a lot of this technology, and whether you're talking CPAP, you're talking industrial automation, aviation, different kinds of sensors, not just pressure sensors, different kind of sensors are feeding that real-time input into the computing system, which in this case is a CPAP machine, which is doing the calculations. And the fact that, your other guest was able to do all that on the nightstand is absolutely critical. Again, it's going to one, allow, a more efficient system, but also faster response time, especially if the patient stops breathing in the middle of the night.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you kind of starting to narrow in on like the client acquisition type of process, do you focus on any particular industry? I know you've mentioned CPAP to manufacturing to aviation. Right. Do you go after one particular industry, or do you have a few different kind of target industries? How do you go about deciding
right.
where to
Right.
put your marketing efforts and dollars and things of that nature?
Yeah. So the first thing we do when we come up with products is we try to look at, what pain points within certain industries can we solve?
Okay.
And then once we know what those pain points are, it's like, can we develop a solution that provides a, better performance than what you can get with an off-the-shelf part? And if we can, then we come up with those products, and then we will target those specific verticals. So let me give you an example. In the medical space, we have 3 product lines. One goes after CPAP devices, which has its own unique, feature set, that product line. One goes after medical ventilators, and one goes after spirometers. So in those cases, then, our marketing efforts are targeted specifically at those segments. Outside of medical, our biggest customer segment is still the HVAC market, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning market. That's still where a lot of our volume is coming from today. And we have, again, some unique features there. So if somebody's doing a pressure transmitter or, variable air controller, or let's say a clean room, we end up, coming up with solutions specific for those segments. And then the other one is the aviation and industrial automation and aviation, primarily UAVs. The wing drones is where we've had a lot of success because of the unique capabilities of our sensors.
Very nice. So I like that. So you go into it with a solution to a problem that you're pretty confident they already have.
Right.
You're not just randomly, obviously, going into a market, or you don't have just an off-the-shelf type of product. There is obviously
Correct.
some research and development done, some thought brought into it, like, hey,
Yep.
here's a problem that we can solve where we're adding more value, driving costs down for the client. Like, there's a significant value proposition there if we can provide this to XYZ industry, XYZ type of business. And then when you go into the market, are you building demos ahead of time? Are you, if you're new, obviously you're new to some of these markets, or we're new to some of these markets, do you start out by building demos and samples and things of that nature? Or is it more of how does that process work?
Yeah, it's actually a combination. In some cases, for example, with CPAP, we were able to build demos, right? We acquired some CPAP machines, and then we add, we replace the pressure sensor and run some demos on our unique capabilities. Some of the other ones, it's a little bit harder, like with industrial automation and UAVs. So in that case, it's more, we do have evaluation kits that we offer customers, so they can buy evaluation kits where they get an evaluation board to log data and various sensors so they can test in different environments.
Gotcha. And then as far as the, I guess let's just start. How does the sales process or the client acquisition process even start for you guys? What's step one for Superior Sensors?
Yeah. So it's mostly digital marketing, and I'll go into the details on the digital marketing in a second, but we also do like to attend various trade shows and conferences that are industry specific to go out there and meet people. We were just at an HVAC show where we were walking the floor and going to different booths, just trying to understand, their product lines. Do they use pressure sensors? Are they having any issues? And, is there an opportunity for us? But the bulk of what we do is through digital marketing. We do create a lot of content, application specific content. We're very active with blogging. We do create our own videos. We do some ads. We do partner with the EDA automation sites where we have our models available, and we do some promotion there as well. And we also, we've done different kinds of ads, but the ones that we have found most effective for us to date have been Google search ads. Because we do get people are looking for a sensor, and they're looking maybe for an application specific sensor, and then they come to our site. They then click the buy now links to go to our distributors, or they download data sheets, and we get a very, very good response there.
Phenomenal. That's great. So it's a combination. You're taking that old school,
Right.
shaking hands, kissing babies, as I
Hmm.
like to say, on the
Yep.
floor of these
Yep.
showroom floors, and that type of stuff. But then you're also peppering in, or I don't know what your ad spend is, but you're also layering in, I should say, a digital marketing approach.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
you
I
know,
think it's absolutely critical because we're the new guy, right? So while a sliver of it is brand building, it's really more, most of our digital advertising is yeah, there's brand building, but how can we generate leads?
Yeah, and then
And
also it's correct me if I'm wrong, and you just highlighted it where you're the small fish, but in terms of, do you have any idea? Because I'm just there. It's your application can be used in so many different
right.
industries.
Yep.
It's your total addressable market. It's within the B2B space. It's like, well, what's your total addressable market? But for you, it has to be infinite. I don't want to say infinite because nothing's infinite, but it's in the billions
It is
of
in the
billions of billions of
it is in the
dollars.
billions of
And,
dollars.
and the correct me if I'm wrong, right now you're operating or capturing, a very small sliver of it, a small less than
Right.
1%. And it's not because your technology isn't capable of helping the rest of the
Mhm.
clients. In a lot of cases, they just don't know you exist yet. They don't know who you are. You haven't been
Correct.
able to scale the outreach and scale the
Hmm.
exposure to that type of level. And honestly, that's literally 99.9% of businesses that are on the show. B2B businesses are so focused on their product and their service and what they're delivering.
Hmm.
They kind of neglect that part of it. They think trade
Yeah.
shows and conferences are, enough for all that it takes. So it's great that
Right.
you're, layering in Google and some other digital marketing
Yeah.
aspects as well.
Yeah, I would say in our case, it's more the opposite, where we lead more with, digital marketing and getting out there. And then, yeah, we do supplement it a little bit by really walking trade shows. So we're not spending money on booths because, to me, I'd rather, every dollar I have, it's like, what else can I do? And it's usually going back to digital marketing because it's more effective, and heck, I can track it a lot better. So I know a little bit more, am I getting my bang for my buck with digital marketing?
I love how you said that. Yes, it's trackable, right? And you put a couple sales guys on the floor in Vegas and, no judgment, but assuming they're not, hungover from the night before, stayed out too late, they're
Yeah.
able to what, go collect 50 business cards, maybe
Mhm.
100 business cards,
Yeah.
shake some hands, and then they got to call and follow up with them. And, you got 5 or 10,000 people on a floor. That's a big fish or a big pond to fish in.
Yeah.
There's definitely ways to get in front of more of those people a lot more efficiently and stay in front of them, well after the events.
Yeah. And it's interesting is we've grown, in the last 5 years because we also send out a quarterly newsletter. We don't want to bombard people with too much. So we send out a quarterly newsletter that people opt in. And 5 years ago, our distribution was 600 people. Now it's almost 3,500 people.
Nice.
So, we know we do get that. And we get good open rates. We get around 40% open rates, anywhere from, 30%, around 35% click-through rates that people are going in and actually, looking at our content as well.
Perfect. And then what about So you're using obviously predominantly digital marketing to get leads in and get people in the
Right.
door. So then once they come in the door, they fill out the form, they pick up the phone and call. How much, or if any AI and automation is used after that point, or once they're in the door, is that 100% human calls, emails, and touch points moving forward?
It predominantly is human intervention at that point. We do use AI when, with, helping us create ads, determining which channels, how to market, those kinds of things. And we use AI as best as we can to, for analytics, to analyze what we're doing. But once somebody reaches out and we talk to them, it's very much personal approach for us. We are dealing with usually much larger customers and electrical engineers, and they don't want to be marketed to. They'd rather have a conversation with one of our engineers than have me or somebody from the marketing or sales team
Yeah, talk
continuing.
to some sales guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So so
They,
so
they, they want to. My business partner in one of the business, I call him, our chief nerd, and I would say that to his
Mhm.
face. But it's like, yeah, sometimes you get those guys on the call. It's like, you want to talk nerd? Let me get you my chief nerd, and
Yeah.
you guys can chop it up. And I'm not speaking your language, but I know who can.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, but again, that's where I think I mentioned on the pre-show. That's where I think is really interesting, or going to be interesting moving forward in the next 3 months to 3 years, or heck, 3 days to 3 years, whatever you want to call it. But where's that pendulum? So I love that you're using digital marketing initially. Maybe it's not AI specifically, but Google's using some form of AI
Oh,
to get people
absolutely.
in the door. So even if that client acquisition process is still maybe 10 or 15% digital, so you can scale more and get in front of more people
Hmm.
actively searching, but then
Yep.
you take over the human relationship for the other 80 to 85%. um, you wouldn't be able to generate as much business as you have been without that initial 10 to 15% of that digital
Oh,
presence. Which I
let me give you a good real life example. Last week we got an email. This company, they're in Europe. They say, hey, we've got this application. We're very impressed with the specs of your sensors. So they found us through Google. And you're right, I do have clicked on using the AI tools of Google to help me find the right customers, and I think it's very effective. So they said, hey, we're very interested in your sensors, but, we'd like to have a call with you first. We'd like to understand your technology a little bit better. Are you guys available for a call? So, that's how it came in. And, we have a call with them tomorrow morning to go through, and, we're going to have our CTO on the call just to make sure we can answer all their technical questions. And we're getting a lot of that. So like you said, the AI tools are helping us in terms of coming up with the best way to reach out to customers and also kind of grab their initial attention. Then we go in with the human aspect, and it's really more of, and it's usually a very technical discussion. We had one just last week with this US, actually a government agency, and they were so impressed that we, even though they had their PhDs in physics, that we educated them on pressure sensor integration, that kind of thing. And then as they move forward, we'll use AI tools with mixed with our analytics to really analyze the success of those programs.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. I love how you're tracking everything and doing all that as well. And yeah, I personally think it's, you if you can get 20% up front,
Hmm.
and you get the scale and the exposure based off digital marketing, AI,
Right.
emailing, that type of stuff, then that's phenomenal. But then yeah, you have to be able to come in and, nobody's going to buy your product with a 100% digital AI experience. You're not
Right.
selling shoes, or, a
We're not
hairbrush
a
or
consumer
toothpaste.
company. Yep.
Exactly. They need a
Hmm.
relationship. They're
Yep.
because the quality of your product and what you're delivering is going to have a huge impact on the quality of their service and their products. So they're banking their reputation on your reputation, and that's not going to
Exactly.
happen on a couple clicks online or a video
Hmm.
or something along those lines, right?
Yeah, exactly. The one thing we need to remember with, at least our part of B2B is we're providing a component. At the end of the day, we're providing a component that's going to be integrated into a larger system. So if, unless they have the confidence that we can deliver on the component, on time with the performance and the reliability that we promise, then their entire product's at risk. And they do need to talk to you. They do want to understand. We have companies that come in, they audit our facilities because we manufacture here. So we have companies coming in and looking at the manufacturing operations just to ensure that yes, you are following ISO guidelines. You do have the systems in place that we know that if there's an issue that does come up, because they do come up, that you'll know how to debug it and resolve it as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, as part of that sales process, do you do on-site visits or do you invite them
Yeah.
in if the
Both.
manufacturing's right on site
Both.
there? Is that often part of the process to help build trust and credibility or
Yeah. Yeah, both. It's actually both. I mean, we always extend an open invitation to any of our customers to visit us here. We're in the Bay Area, right in the heart of Silicon Valley, to come on in. And then, we do hit the road a lot. Next month I'm in Europe actually attending a trade show in Italy. And we've already set up customer visits outside of that. So yeah, we'll go to a trade show for a day or two, but then we'll travel to other cities in Italy and Switzerland and Germany to visit our customers just to check in on them, as well as potential customers to continue the sales process.
yeah, I mean, if you're going to fly all the way over there, you got to
Exactly.
make the most bang, get the most bang for your buck, so to speak,
Yep.
right? You mentioned it earlier. You got to stretch every dollar, or make sure every dollar is being, stretched and utilized, and
Right.
especially in the marketing and the business development side of things,
Hmm.
it's easy for that budget to spiral out of control, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely is.
Well, I mean, what else? What else have you? So we've kind of talked about what's working, what you've been doing. Anything stand out at you as like a lesson learned that you've tried and like, hey, we tried blast emailing and fell flat on our face and it didn't work, or have you tried anything that did not work?
Yeah, we've tried a lot of different things.
Maybe social media ads. I don't know.
Yeah, let me give you, for us, we have a tracking mechanism that, one thing we don't do is we don't get content on our website, which is a challenge. But we can always tell where traffic is coming in if they're coming in from a marketing campaign. And since we're not gating and we're not capturing that person's information, we track, are they sending us emails? Are they downloading our data sheets? Are they watching our videos? Are they, clicking the buy buttons, which go to our distributors? And, we assign different weights to each of those things. So we can come up with our own, which ads are more effective, or which ad channels are more effective than others. So we have our own little system there, and we track all of that, and what we've seen. So I can tell you, when we do Google search ads, the people that come to our site are looking to either buy samples or download data sheets or download CAD models, because the majority of them do that. We've had some campaigns where they weren't as effective. Let me give you one example. LinkedIn. We ran ads on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a great marketing tool. And I love the fact that you can specify company size, titles, levels, you can do all of that. But the problem is going back to who are the ones that are buying our products? They're mostly electrical engineers. And electrical engineers, while many of them have LinkedIn profiles, they don't go to LinkedIn to click on ads. We were not getting the same kind of reaction from a LinkedIn ad. We've done some email blasts with partners. Depending on the publication, the ones that are more technical, we had better response. Some that are more general, and even though they're so-called technical publications, we haven't had that same level of response. So we've tried different things. We've run ads on YouTube with our videos. We got a lot of views, because they're animated videos. So some of them are cute videos with our little robot mascot, kind of thing there. So it's great. We got a lot of views. Didn't get a whole lot of people though then clicking and going to our website. So you really need to understand, right? Right? They always say, what's the buyer persona? right? And you need to understand who the buyer is. And I think as we've been doing this for years, we've been able to refine to better understand who those are and what's the most effective way to reach them. It is white papers. It is, blogging. It is, blogging, very much application specific,
I was gonna say, it's speaking
blogs.
at the end of the day, it's speaking
Yeah,
their language, right?
right.
You need to talk specifically to them. It's not, hey, we make the best sensors, come check
Yeah,
us out. It's, hey, it's
yeah,
XYZ specs, XYZ.
right.
I don't even speak that language, so I don't want to sound
Hmm.
stupid, but yes, it's you need
Yeah.
to speak directly to their language. We had I think he was a pre-show. He hasn't been a guest on yet, but engineer, and he
Hmm.
literally said the same thing, that he actually designs and slightly different,
Hmm.
but he's an engineer in the defense department, where he's just
Yeah,
like, you have about 60 to 100. He's like, the engineers that you want to talk to are literally like narrow-minded into one problem that they're working
right,
on at that time.
right,
You have 2 minutes, if you're lucky, probably a minute, to identify that you know what their problem is, and you might have a possible solution to
right.
part of their ecosystem, whatever they're
Yep.
working on. And then outside of that, you're done. Like, it's just, you got to speak their language, know what they're talking, know what they're thinking about, and then identify a solution, or they're going on to the next person, going on to the next email, the next ad, whatever it is.
And as much as it pains me to say it, they don't want to hear the marketing fluff. So
No.
all the stuff that it's like, oh, I came up with this really creative way to position things. They don't care. It's like you said, it's like, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's a problem I have. Can you solve it and how?
So that's what, through the couple part sponsorships or sponsor companies that I'm partners in, that's one of the biggest things that we've learned about, as we're kind of designing ads and helping people with their marketing
Hmm.
exposures and things like that. It's, what is that? You really have to dig really deep into the ICP, that ideal client
Right.
profile, and
Hmm.
then what is that bleeding neck problem? Like, what is
Yep.
going to jump off that screen to them and speak their language within 1 to 2 sentences, that they're going to want to click and visit a website and learn more. And that's really the key to that B2B marketing, because every business is slightly different, trying to solve a slightly different problem, has different industry or niche
Right.
problems going on at this time, whether it be financial and lending and investors,
Hmm.
or, I mean, God, every industry is
Yep.
so different, and you have to really speak directly to them.
Yeah. And that's where I think we have an advantage over the other pressure sensor manufacturers, is because we are developing application specific sensors. We have sensors and we have products basically pre-configured that address the different pain points that, these designers have. Somebody doing a
Phenomenal.
CPAP machine has a different pain points than somebody designing a UAV, or trying to put pressure sensors to manage the pneumatics of robots in a factory, or of a or of a positive pressure room, where you want to keep, where in a hospital, that kind of thing. And so we have different attributes that are basically pre-configured for them to make their lives a lot easier when they design their products.
That's great. So what else? So in terms of, when I'd ask the question in terms of like the biggest mistakes, would you say like one of the mistakes would just be maybe in the beginning not tracking everything? Because it sounds like you kind of got
Yeah,
into how you
it evolved over time.
Yeah,
It evolved
exactly. So
over
I mean,
time.
so you've learned that tracking is very important, so that way
Yeah,
you can account for
yeah,
99 cents of every dollar going out the door, and making sure it's
right.
used most efficiently. But I guess that's obviously part of the process, because in the
Yeah,
beginning, everybody just loves, not everybody, but yeah, they want to do a lot, and they try to do too much,
yep,
and then stuff isn't tracked and accounted. Next thing you know, you spent thousands of dollars on social
yeah.
media ads with no
Hmm.
ROI.
Yeah. And the other lesson I would say that we learned is early on when we started is we cast a very wide net. And it was like, okay, we're going to go after, anybody that needs pressure sensors, we'll market to anybody. But we learned quickly that, you really need to be very, like you said earlier, Jason, laser focused on, this is, I'm trying to go after this customer set. So let me create messaging and go to the channels where that customer set goes. And that's something that we learned as well.
And I think, excuse me, I think in marketing, period, that's super important. You
Mhm.
can't speak. What's the old adage? You speak to, if you try to talk to everybody, nobody listens.
Yep.
Um, but I personally think it's 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more important in the B2B space, right? Because
I couldn't
you're,
agree
you're
more.
selling some
Mhm.
B2B consumer product,
Mhm.
right? Like, okay, who's my ideal client for, I don't know, toothpaste or toilet paper,
Right.
tennis shoes? It's just,
Mhm.
it's so different where how do I define and speak to an engineer trying to design a better CPAP machine or better
Mhm.
pressure sensor for a turbine engine on a freaking
Right.
Rolls Royce engine? I don't know, something super
Mhm.
specific. Like, it's just how do you find and talk to that specific person? And that's, I guess that's the fun part of B2B marketing and
Yeah.
outreach and, finding clients, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Wonderful. Anything keeping you up at night in the industry right now in terms of I don't know, anything jump out at, kind of keeping you up at night, any issues coming about, any problems?
Well, I would say in general, one of the challenges is since we don't, gate our data, is really understanding, how do we, how can I better, attribute where my leads are coming from? And that's something that it is a challenge. I mean, I know how many people are coming, but I don't know which ones, the ones that are buying, where did they originally come from? And that's where I hope with AI that, we can get more intelligent with AI tools to be able to somehow link all that together.
Yeah, so that person that ends up being a client and spending money with you,
Yeah.
how did you want to track that buyer's journey? You want to know,
Yeah,
okay, what ads did
exactly.
they click on? How did they
Yeah.
click on multiple ads? Did they just click on
Right.
one ad? How many times did they visit the website? What emails did they see? Did they see
Hmm.
retargeting ads? And then,
Yep.
how did
Yeah.
they and honestly, that I like where you're going with that because that's really, really important. I mean, that's
Hmm.
one of the things my partner Alvin helps with in data accelerators is that buyer's journey is
Right.
how do we track that buyer's journey from initial click to conversion, and then now how do we go back and duplicate that, right? What
Yep.
ad what was because a lot of the times you'll find you'll run say three different variations of ads, and one
Hmm.
ad might generate more leads but zero conversions, and one ad
Right.
might have less leads, but then all of a sudden you have two paying clients worth
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars each. And
Hmm.
so you have to, and I think that's where a mistake a lot of people they get so focused on leads, leads, leads. It's like, look,
Yeah.
leads are great. Yes, that's one key metric to a process, but leads don't pay the bills. Leads don't
Right.
scale and grow companies. Conversions and clients scale and grow companies and pay the bills. So let's focus on that as the key metric and then work everything else backwards. So many
Yep.
people stop at the lead part and then don't focus so much on the conversion end of things. And I
Yeah.
think sounds like you're on the right track though.
Yeah, it's funny because I get pitched a lot from, different, marketing organizations on, you can run this campaign. We'll get you a lot of clicks to your website, a lot of clicks to your website. And I keep saying clicks to my website don't mean anything. They don't. I track what do they do when they get here? Do they actually interact and do the right kind of interactions on our website? And then that's how I can then determine whether a campaign was successful or not. And sometimes they're taken aback because all they think is, "Oh, I got you the clicks. You know, I can get you, a 10% click rate. So what more do you want?" I said, "Yeah, but if the 10% click rate and 0.1% actually does anything, that's useless to me."
Yeah, if you're getting a bunch of 20 something teenage college students clicking to my
Yeah,
website, tricking them somehow or duping them to get to my website, then what the heck's
yeah,
the point? Exactly. To your point, clicks mean even less than leads, right? Because if
yeah,
clicks don't turn into leads, then the clicks don't mean anything
yeah.
either. And that's where, that and that's another difficulty of the B2B marketing is how do you go hunting with that sniper
Mhm.
rifle in the B2B space, making the
Yeah.
most efficient use of your ad
Yep.
spend without having to take that spray and pray approach that, Zuck and Google and everybody wants you to take. Is, I guess, Google maybe a little bit less with the contextual keyword searching,
Right.
but especially on social media, it's like, hey, just give us your ad spend. We're gonna throw what against the wall and see what sticks.
Hmm.
And hopefully our algorithm can find a couple clients for you. So you keep, we're gonna give you just enough leads to keep so you can keep feeding the
Right.
kitty, so to speak, but not
Yeah.
really enough to scale or do anything with.
Yeah, let me give you a quick example here because I know we're running out of
Oh
time
yeah,
here.
we're a little past 30
I
minutes.
ran a campaign, a social influencer campaign. So this was through one of these, technical publications, and I ran it for a quarter. My website traffic went through the roof. I got a lot of people that clicked. Zero interactions from it. Zero real quality out of that. So again, they looked at it when they said, "Oh, you want to renew? Look at this, great! You're getting all these clicks." I said, "Yeah, but they're not doing anything. They go to our site and then they leave. What good is that to me? So yeah, you really need to try to go as far through their journey as possible to determine, what is really an effective marketing campaign."
Absolutely. And then yeah, because yes, you have to go through the journey with them in order to drive that conversion and figure out what's going to work. Because, like, I know, you know, and another thing a lot of marketing companies miss is the buying cycle. They take for
Mhm.
granted that this isn't an initial click. I mean, your buy
Right.
cycle, I mean, what is 6 months probably?
No, it's usually over a year. Medical devices, it could be 3 to 5 years. The
Okay,
whole
okay.
thing. I mean, it's just
Jesus.
yeah,
So, okay, so
it's a very
so
long
for
one.
12, and so you probably it's a 12-month buy cycle. Let's just say
Mhm.
12
Yeah.
months. And there's probably a minimum five, if not possibly 10 to 15 to 20 people involved in that decision making and that buying committee
Hmm.
at times, right? Because
Yeah.
one, you have to get the engineers to buy in, the
Yep.
R&D, then you have to get the actual product developers or
Hmm.
manufacturing, and then you got to get finance, and then the final decision makers, I likely CEOs and CFOs involved. So it's,
Right.
you need half the company to know who superior sensor technology is and know, like, and trust you, so they can sign off on that final contract, proposal, invoice, whatever you
Right.
guys put together for them, uh, and move forward as a client. I mean, and during
Exactly.
that 12-month process, you know what's the best way to do that? How do you follow up with everybody at that company, everybody in that buying committee for a 12-month period, establishing trust and credibility?
Hmm. Yep.
That's one of the challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely is. Yep.
Well, perfect. Well, before we sign off here, I really appreciate your time sharing some great information here, some great insights for our listeners here in terms of fellow B2B business owners, learning what you can do at your company, which is
Hmm.
phenomenal. Excited to see where things go for you guys, and then also, how do we get business? How can we incorporate? And everybody's obviously looking for a better, more efficient way to acquire clients. And
Yep.
as you know, it's an uphill battle in the B2B space. So I really appreciate your time sharing your knowledge and insight. Before we sign off here, I used to always ask, like, what's your favorite book when it comes to, like, business and, maybe business or sales, but then so many people are into podcasts. So do you have a favorite book or podcast that you would recommend to the listeners?
Well, there's one podcast that I listen to on a regular basis. It's the Corporate Competitor Podcast,
Okay.
which is basically, oh gosh, what's his name again? But basically he interviews people that were athletes that are now in leadership roles in corporations and lessons
Oh,
learned. And there's a new episode every week, every 2 weeks, from Don Yaeger, who used to be a Sports Illustrated journalist.
sounds familiar.
And yeah, and I just find it fascinating because every podcast you're getting a different perspective. And at the end of the podcast, he always goes, what are my top three takeaways from this discussion? And they're so good. I send them to my son because he's in the business world to say, hey, this is good stuff. Listen to this.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, I find it to be really, really valuable.
What was the name of it again? The Corporate
Corporate Competitor Podcast.
Competitor. Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
phenomenal. I'll make sure I'll check that out. I have not. surprised I haven't heard of that one or nobody's recommended it, but I'm definitely gonna. I like the athlete to corporate. Not that
Yeah.
I was a high school athlete, not that I was a athlete by any means or consider myself an athlete, but
Well,
I
same
usually
here. Same
I
here.
like that perspective though because it
Yeah.
usually comes from that kind of competitive,
Yep.
grind it out, work
The
hard type of
competitive
perspective.
nature, the teamwork, the importance of
Exactly.
teamwork, and they're great lessons. They really are. I find them fascinating.
Well, wonderful. Well, again, I really appreciate your time. That a great recommendation at the end there for the podcast. I recommend everybody checking it out. Thank you for everybody for listening and tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe here as you're likely listening to this on the YouTube channel. If you're listening to a clip of this on social media, please follow us everywhere on social media, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere else. Don't forget to jump over to it's superiorsensors.com
Yes. Yeah.
and
The
see
website
what
is Superior Sensors with an
Yes,
S at
see
the
what
end.
they're all about. If you are in the manufacturing, aviation, HVAC space, or anything that you feel might be able to, they might be able to help you out. Obviously, reach out. It's a phenomenal company, phenomenal product, and doing a lot of great things. So, again, Anthony, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate you taking the time.
All right, signing off, everybody. Have a great day. We'll talk to everybody soon. Tune in another couple days for another episode. Take care.